Okay, today I'm going to show you how to do two-color brioche. We are going to be making a cowl. We start off in our first color, and then we're going to introduce the second color, and then we flip them so that we end reversed, and we're going to end with our second color. We're going to use a different cast on so that we get a nice stretchy cast on. We'll be using the Old Norwegian or German twist cast on. It's a variation of the long tail cast on. So if you know how to do the long tail cast on, it's kind of similar. And if you don't, I'll be able to show you as well. So let's go ahead and pick the color that we want our first color to be. And it says that we are going to cast on loosely, and we want to cast on 90 stitches. Now, since it's a variant of the long tail cast on, we do have to keep a long tail. So I like to err on the caution of having too much yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out a bunch. And then I like to start right away with the slingshot. So I'm going to put the tail, okay, the working yarn goes over my index finger. The tail of the yarn goes over my thumb, and I'm going to hold both of them with my pinky. And then I turn my hand to look like a gun. Okay? So the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to take our hook, and it says that we're going to cast on with our larger needle. So I'm going to insert from the bottom, and I'm going to pull it back to make a slingshot. And then I'm going to flip my wrist up so that my palm is facing me. Now, normally with the long tail cast on, you would go under just one strand up your thumb. For the twisted cast on, we're actually going to go under these strands. So the needle goes from the bottom under both strands, and then we're going to dip down our thumb, okay, back down. So now we've twisted. We're going to go over this index thumb, and then the little triangle, okay, let me see if I can show you exactly. There's a little triangle right over here. That's where the needle's going to come through. Okay, and we take our thumb out, and then by pulling our thumb in, we're going to tighten, but we don't want to make it too tight. So again, we go under both strands, and then back down the thumb. You can trace your thumb down, and then we're going to go over the index strand, and then we're going to go back into that little triangle that's right over here, and the needle just comes down, and then it comes out. So the very first one you're going to get 2. After that, you just get 1 each. So we're going to go under both, down, around the index finger, and then back through this loop to come off and pull tight. Under both, in, around, and then back down. Okay, and you may be saying, why are we doing this? Isn't long tail cast on good enough? This gives us an extra stretchy cast on, so that way it stretches more and it'll closer match our cast off. Okay, so underneath both, in through the thumb, around, and then I kind of use my thumb to bring the yarn back, and you'll see it just kind of naturally comes off. So under both, in, around, and through. And you're going to do this a total of 90 times. I'll let you watch me a little bit longer, and then we're going to pause to where we're going to join. So under both, in, around, and through. Okay, so under both, back in, around, and through. Okay, and you don't want to pull too tight because we don't want this to be a super tight cast on. Okay, so I'm going to continue and I'll meet you back once I've done 90 stitches. Okay, I have casted on all 90 stitches and now we are going to join to work in the round. Now it is very important that you do not twist the stitches, because if we twist the stitches when we join, it's going to be twisted throughout the entire piece and there's no way that we can untwist it. It's not a mistake that you can fix throughout. So you have to make sure that you don't twist to begin with. And the way that I do that is I'm going to make sure that all these little bumps I have facing the same way. So I'm going to face them up. If you want, you can face them down. You just want to make sure that you go through and you get everything facing the same way. Okay, so you'll see we have our 2 needles and I'm going to go through them again to make sure they're all facing the same way and nothing's twisted. Okay, good. So we're going to put the empty needle, the needle without the working yarn, in our left hand, and the needle with the yarn we're going to put in our right hand. Okay, for the very first stitch, I like to use the tail and the working yarn. I find that it gives it a little bit more of a foundation and the join doesn't stretch as much. So I'm going to hold both of them as one, and our pattern tells us that we are going to join, and then we are going to do garter stitch for 4 rounds. And in the round, what that means is that you're going to knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row. Okay, now once we did our cast on, they want you to switch to your smaller needles. So if you have interchangeables like I do, I just switched the tips. If you are working with 2 different circular needles, what you would do is you would just drop this needle and then pick up the smaller needle and start knitting with the smaller needle, and everything will be joined. So we're going to make sure that our bumps are all the same way, that we're not twisted. I'm going to put my stitch marker on. Okay, and we put the stitch marker on the right hand needle, and then we're just going to knit a row like normal. So the very first stitch, I use the tail and the working yarn, and then it comes off, and then I continue knitting. I'm not going to do anything with the tail, and I'm just going to knit my round. Okay, so I'm going to come back to you once I've gone and I've knit around and purled around twice. Okay, I just completed my first knit row. When you get up to the marker, you're going to move the marker from the left hand needle to the right hand needle, and that starts your row. Now the very first stitch, you'll notice, has 2 little loops. We're going to knit them as one. Now because we're going to be, with brioche knitting, we slip stitches a lot and we're moving things around. The stitches need to be placed on the needles the correct way. So if you're a combination knitter like I am, where you hold the yarn in your left hand, normally when I would purl, I just kind of grab the yarn and go under. But you'll see when I do that, when I come around to the next row, the stitch is on backwards, where the front leg should be to the right and it's actually to the left. So that means that I would be knitting into the back loop. Now it's too much frustration to constantly be rearranging the stitches. So what I would recommend, if you're a combination knitter, okay, or a continental knitter, so when you're going to purl, and it's a little tricky to get into the hang of it, when you purl, the yarn has to go from the top to the bottom around the needle. Okay, so what I like to do is I bring the yarn around, and then with my thumb, I kind of just put my thumb here, and then I finish the stitch. So I go in, grab the yarn with my thumb, hold it down, and then go through. For those of you who purl normally, there's nothing different in here. You would just go in and purl like normal, which obviously I don't do a lot, so it's tricky. Okay, so the way normally you would go in, you would purl, and you wrap the yarn the same way from top to bottom, and you go through. So that's the only thing different. If you normally knit and purl where after you purl you're knitting through the back loop, it's going to be a lot of aggravation. So I would try to get it so that you're not knitting through the back loop. It's not that you can't do it, it's just going to be pretty aggravating. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish purling this row, and then I'll show you how to do the setup row. Okay, for the interest of saving time, I'm just going to do 2 rows instead of 4 rows. But you'll see the pattern has 4 rows, okay? What's really nice about brioche is that it's reversible. So it's the same on the one side. One side will be one color dominant, and then the other side will be the other color dominant. So it's really nice. Okay, so our setup row is we are going to knit 1, and then it says slip 1, yarn over. So what that means is that we're going to bring the yarn to the front. We're going to slip 1 stitch as if we're purling. So we go in from the back. We just move it from the left-hand needle to the right-hand needle. And now we're going to wrap the yarn around the needle and bring it back to the back. And then we're going to knit 1. So again, yarn comes to the front. We move our stitch as if we're purling. Yarn goes around the back, and then we knit 1. So for the continental knitters, you can kind of do it a little bit simpler. So we've already knit 1. We're just going to pop the yarn in the front, grab the yarn, and then automatically it does the yarn over. So we knit 1, pop the yarn to the front, slip 1, and then it catches. So again, knit, grab the yarn, and then we slip 1 and bring it back. Now for those of you who are not continental knitters, we can still do this. So we're going to knit like normal. Knit 1 normally. Bring the yarn to the front between the needles. Slip 1, and then bring the yarn around back again, and then knit the next stitch. So again, we've just knit the stitch. We're going to bring the yarn to the front. We're going to slip 1 purlwise, and then we wrap the yarn around to the back again, go into the next one, and knit 1. Okay, you're going to do this all the way across. So we knit 1, move the yarn to the front, slip 1, wrap the yarn around, and we do that all the way across. Okay. Okay, the last stitch of the row is going to end with a slip 1 yarn over. Okay, and then we move our marker. Now it's very important that you don't lose the last yarn over when you go to move your marker. Okay, sometimes that can happen, and then it kind of throws you off. So now the first row of our brioche pattern is going to start with, I refer to it as a burp row. I think that's what they do. It's barks and burps pretty much. So what that means is that you're going to, with the yarn forward, so we move the yarn forward, we are going to slip 1 and yarn over. So it's the same thing. So we slip 1 and then we're yarning over. And then we are going to burp purl 1, basically. So that means that we are going to count the yarn over and the slip stitch as 1. So we're going to purl both of them together. And we're going to do that all the way around. So for continental knitters, it's kind of easy. You just automatically, the yarn's in the front. We're going to purl 1. We're just going to slip 1. And then we purl our slip stitch and the yarn over together. Okay. For non-continental knitters, we're going to slip 1 with the yarn in front, and then we bring the yarn from the back to the front again. Okay, so we have just wrapped around, and then we're going to purl our next stitch. Okay, so yarn still in the front, we slip 1, we bring the yarn from the back to the front between the needles, and then the next stitch we're going to purl. Okay. I think I lost it. Yep. So that's our yarn over. We go in, we wrap around, and then we purl. Okay, so this whole row is going to be the same. You're going to slip one with the yarn in the front, yarn over, and then purl the slip stitch and the yarn over from the previous row together. And that's all it is. So we slip one, yarn over, go through. Now, if you have to go backwards because you messed up and you did it in the wrong order, what you're going to do is if you lift up your yarn a little bit, you'll see that it kind of makes a hole underneath. You're going to insert the hook into that little hole, the needle into that hole, and then just take your stitch out. And then you undo the yarn over and then put the slip stitch back on. So again, if you kind of lift this up, you'll see it makes a little hole under here. From the front to the back, you put your needle in, slip out the stitch, undo the yarn over, and move your stitch back. That's if you need to undo it. Okay, so this one ended with a purl, so we're going to slip one, we purl these two together, and you're going to do that all the way across. Okay, I'll meet you at the end of the round. Okay, so to give you a little troubleshooting, I ran into my first mistake. This one here should have its yarn over. Now if you look on the other side, I can see that the yarn over just kind of fell off the needle. So I'm going to just put the yarn over back on the needle, and then I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. Okay. And then I just keep going. And I'm back on track. Okay, I got to the end of the row, and I'm going to slip my marker. Just make sure that you don't lose the beginning yarn over. So now we're going to do the bark rows. So we're going to right off the bat, we're going to start by knitting the next stitch with its yarn over. Just knit it like normal. Okay. And now we're going to do a slip one yarn over. Okay. And then knit these two together. Slip one, knit two together, and that's it. Those are the two stitches that we have for brioche knitting. It's the purl and then it's the knit. And basically all you're doing is you're slipping one. So again, we bring the yarn forward, we slip one, and then we're going to knit the next slip and yarn over together. And that's it. Now it looks kind of funny to begin with. It's going to take a couple rows for it actually to gel. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to work rows 1 and 2, which is your purl row and your knit row, until your work measures 1 inch from the cast on edge. I'm going to go, and then we're going to add our second color. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish out this row, and then I'll show you how to add your yarn for your next color. Okay, so you're going to continue in your pattern until you get up to 1 inch, and then you're going to switch colors when you're on a row 2 or the knit row. Okay, so I have not gotten up to my knit row yet, but I'm going to show you how to change the colors. Okay, or I'm sorry, you do it after your knit row, which I did, excuse me. So now this next row is going to be the purl row. So we're just going to drop the old yarn, and we're going to leave it in the back. We're still going to use it. We're just not going to use it right now. And we're going to move our yarn to the forward because we're going to be starting with a slip one yarn over. And then we're going to be purling. So we do our yarn over, and then we purl. And you want to leave a bit of a tail at the end. Okay, so that way we can weave this in. But for right now, we leave a bit of a tail. It can kind of just stay there. And we're just going to drop the other yarn. So we're going to be doing our slip one yarn over and then purl one. And then once you get to the two colors, the brioche really starts to pop and you'll be able to see it more. So after you work a couple rows of the two colors. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue this row, and then I will show you a little trick that we're going to do so that way we kind of close up the gap between the two colors when we change between rows. So I'll be right back at the end of the row. Okay, so I have gone around and I did my row. So now we're going to switch colors. And what I like to do is I put the previous color and I kind of lay it towards the front. And then I make sure my other color, my old color, kind of goes over it. So let's switch these around. So the new color I lay down, and you'll see how it's a little bit twisted around the old color. You can see how the new color kind of captures the old color, okay, by going over it. And then we're going to, for this row, I give it a little bit of a tug when we start, not too much, just a little bit of a tug. And since we have our unattached tail, I'm going to kind of hold the other color tail. And then we're going to right away do our bark knit. So we're going to knit one with the new color. And then we're going to continue with our pattern. So from here on out, for the first half of the cowl, every row 1 or purl row is going to be used in your first color. And every knit row is going to be your contrasting color. When you get halfway through the pattern or 2/3 of the way through the pattern, you're going to switch them. But for the most part, all the purl rows are going to be in your first color and all the knit rows are going to be in your second color. And you just, when you get to switch the yarn, bring the first yarn forward and the other yarn kind of goes over it to trap. And that'll make it so that when you switch colors, there's not a gap between the colors. And you're just going to keep doing this. Once you get down the basics of the 2 stitches, you're just going to fly. It looks a lot more complicated than it is. Okay. In the next video, I'll show you how we're going to do our bind off. We're going to do Elizabeth Zimmerman's stretchy sewn bind off. So that'll also make it so it's a nice and stretchy edge. Okay.